Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderman Wessels. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Florida. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmid. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Ortman. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Carter. 23 present.
A quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God. Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We will suspend with our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolution calendar. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar. Seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. The Alderman from the, Alderman Rhoda, you'd like to approach the dais? Yeah. You guys, Tom, you guys have to figure out. Yep, and then half. Yeah.
Joe?
Joe?
Peggy, did you want to come up too? Yeah, come on up. Ellie's. Come on up, Peggy. It's all informal. Thank you, Mr. President. I am reading a resolution today to recognize Joe Neiman for his many years of service to the city, so I'll go ahead and read that, say a few remarks, and open it up and give Joe an opportunity to speak. Whereas we have been advised that after 32 years of dedicated service to the city of St. Louis, Joseph R. Neiman will soon retire. And whereas Joseph R. Neiman, 32-year career as an attorney for the city of St. Louis, is distinguished by his dedication to public service and the residents of the city of St. Louis. And whereas Joe graduated from St. Louis University High School, St. Louis University, and St. Louis University School of Law, from which he received the Law Journal Award. And whereas from 1971 through 1981, Joe served as an assistant and then associate city councilor. He served as a city councilor for the city of St. Louis from 1981 through 1983. He performed the duties of general counsel for the city of St. Louis, successfully managing its legal business and its law department at the time which was comprised of 25 attorneys, support staff, and a department budget of more than $3 million. And whereas Joe was a partner at the Armstrong Teasdale firm from 1983 until 1991, where he was chairman of the law firm's public law department, and served on the firm's associates committee. He provided and coordinated the legal services for St. Louis Community College, the St. Louis County Special School District, and a number of other public and private clients. And whereas in 1991, Joe was appointed to the city, appointed the attorney manager of the staff of the city councilor's office to establish the first legal office on the premises of Lambert Airport. Thereafter, he has supervised and/or coordinated the services of the legal staff located on site at Lambert and the law offices of the law firms located in St. Louis, Kansas City, and Washington, D.C., and the attorneys based in the St. Louis City Councilor's office in downtown St. Louis. And whereas he has also had a number of affiliations outside the legal profession, including memberships on the board and our officers of the St. Louis March of Dimes, Visitation Academy, Advisory Board of Education, St. Margaret's of Scotland Elementary School Board of Education, the Shaw Community Corporation as a charter member, the Flora Place Protective Association, the Hillcrest Homeowners Association, Our Lady of Lourdes Parish Council, the Vestry of the Church of St. Michael and St. George, and has been a member for 43 years of the Missouri Athletic Club. And whereas Joe was born in the city of St. Louis, August 26, 1945, and married Margaret Peg Kincannon Neiman in 1970. They have 2 children, Laura Anzalotti and Paul Neiman, and 6 grandchildren, Anna, Liza, Mark, Catherine Anzalotti, and Hannah and Claire Neiman. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberations to congratulate and thank Joseph R. Neiman for his 32 years of service with the City of St. Louis, and we wish him peace and happiness in his retirement. And we direct the clerk of the board to spread a commemorative resolution over the permanent rolls of the board and to further prepare a commemorative copy to the end that it may be presented to our honoree at a place and time deemed appropriate by the sponsor. So.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate Joe on his retirement. I told him earlier I was probably responsible for some of his gray hair. I sat out there on the airport commission and, I would come up with ideas, and of course Joe would say, these are not good ideas. So, anyway, congratulations on your retirement, and hopefully, with a little hair dye we can fix that.
All right, Alderman from the 20.
Mr. President, members of the board, it's indeed my great honor and privilege today to wish Mr. Neiman well in retirement as well as his family, because I know that as an attorney you've been working long and hard hours, probably not as long and hard as you did at one time in your career. And if we're all lucky as aldermen, we tend not to see city councilors too often. So probably most of us didn't know you were out at the airport. I probably could tell a few stories here from your time at Armstrong Teasdale, but I don't know if there's an associate partner confidence as well that I'm supposed to keep. But I truly do wish you very well, Mr. Neiman. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Alderman from the 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Joe, I wish you the best. I know you're going to have a long and a productive retirement. You've had a wonderful and illustrious career in the city, and you certainly deserve a long retirement, and I just don't bother your lovely wife, Peg, too much during these retirement years. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Joe, I also, have really, treasured the time that I've had an opportunity to work with you at the Airport Commission, sitting right there to your right. And I'm hoping that Alderman Conway speaks up in a minute, because I know he's had a number of years to work with you also. I cannot thank you for all the work that you've done on behalf of the city. You've been a staunch supporter of the city for so many years, and we're going to miss you. We're going to miss you at the airport. We're going to miss you, making sure that you bring some order to those meetings and make sure we get out of there within an hour, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. And to your lovely wife, Peg, I cannot thank you enough also, because I know when you have someone involved in a city job like that, it takes a lot of time away from the family. This gives you an opportunity to spend some more quality time with him. I don't know if you want that, but you get an opportunity to do that now. Again, enjoy your retirement. Congratulations. And, you know, as we always say, this resolution, although it's but a piece of paper, it is the highest honor this board has to give. It's an official act of the board. So 100, 200 years from now, when they research the records of the city of St. Louis, they will know that we paused in our deliberations on this day to honor and congratulate you because of your many works within the city. And your name will be a permanent part of the records of the city of St. Louis. So congratulations on a job well done. Enjoy your retirement.
I'd like to add a couple remarks before we turn the microphone over to Joe. I've always been proud of the fact that Joe was my cousin. I don't know if everybody knew that or not. He is a cousin on the roadie side of the family, and I guess it's time to be somewhat reflective when you end a career, and forgive me for being a little bit sentimental, but I was always proud of the fact that he was my cousin, although he did make it kind of tough to like him on occasion. When I was younger, Joe was a very strong student in school, and my parents frequently reminded me of that whenever my report card showed up, and it was always kind of rough around the roadie house having him as an older cousin, and so that was my youth. And as our parents' generation aged, Joe was always the most considerate of all the cousins and looking in on our aunts and uncles, and of course my parents frequently reminded me of that as well. My dad and Joe had a special relationship. It's kind of an odd situation. My dad was a pretty good student, so he skipped a grade in school and actually graduated with Joe's mother, who was a year older. And Joe's mother had a lifelong sweetheart, Les Neiman, who was also in that 8th grade class. And I don't know what it was about my dad that he never made the draft and went over to World War II, but for whatever reason, here he was, a 22-year-old guy who, whatever reason, couldn't find a wife during the whole World War II while all the men were overseas. But anyway, Les Neiman married Bride Rhodey during the war, and Joe was born shortly thereafter. And it took even some years after that before my dad would ultimately marry, and so he had a real strong interest in Joe as a child, and was kind of a surrogate. He was the third wheel of this kind of friendship that extended all the way from grade school, and it was kind of a special relationship. I just want to close my remarks by saying, many years ago, Joe, you probably don't even remember this, but I asked you, why you got involved in public service. And he told me it was the Kennedy brothers. And I guess, I grew up and I listened to the Kennedy inaugural speech so many times it was almost like a top 40 song. You never really listened to the words, but he told me that, and I remember going back, and ever since then I've listened to that speech, and it kind of forced me to begin thinking more about what that speech meant and what that meant to our country. And I think now it's 50 years after his assassination almost, and it's been 53 years since the speech. And that call to public service for that new generation of Americans. And I think of what a wonderful personification, Joe, you are, of that thousands of people who, of your generation now over 50 years ago, have heeded that call. And my dad was always fond of saying that his highest compliment to someone young was that when he was particularly happy, he would always say, "Oh, you're a scholar and a gentleman." And Joe, I think your service with the city is worthy of being a scholar and a gentleman. So congratulations on your many years of service.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Thanks very, very much for this resolution recognizing my service to our city. Standing here today before you, it's particularly meaningful to me because, of course, as Joe says, it brings a rush of family and professional memories. The first time I was present in this chamber was in 1953. My mother took me out of the second grade classroom, and we traveled on the bus downtown for the inauguration of Raymond R. Tucker for his first term as mayor of the city of St. Louis. But much, much, much more importantly, we were there to see her brother, my uncle, Joseph P. Brody, take the oath of office for his first term as alderman of the 17th Ward. He was in his late 20s. Today, of course, Joseph D., has long occupied the same office, and he serves with a great deal of distinction and accolades. Looking back, I think that day in 1953 was the beginning of my being hooked on government service. Our family always closely followed the details of every political story about city government, carried in those days by the city's two dailies, the Globe, which tended to be Republican, and the Post, which was solidly Democratic. Each of the dailies had a reporter covering City Hall full-time, and there were lots of details and stories and editorials to read. That was the case when I came to work in the city in 1970. The two dailies had full-time reporters. Lots of stories continued. Some of them good, some of them interesting. And for us as kids, there was lots to discuss at our dinner table, and discuss it we did. You know, I received, as the resolution says, my secondary university and professional education from the Jesuits in the 1960s. It was during the Kennedy-Johnson years, a time of many social changes and in which service in government to tackle problems, particularly the problems in the country's urban areas and with the country's poor, was considered a very worthy undertaking. My formal education just reinforced what I'd been hearing at home for years. When I graduated from class, I say the top 5 students in my law school class all went into social service work. The recently formed Legal Aid Society, the Public Defender Bureau, various anti-poverty agencies. That was the beginning. The creditors caught up with a lot of them later on, and they moved into other areas. But those were the times. So once I graduated from St. Louis U's Law School and married Peg, who is, of course, here today, and passed the Missouri bar exam. She married me before I passed the bar exam, which was wonderful. I landed my first job as a lawyer in the city's law department. Didn't interview anywhere else. This is what I wanted to do. And I guess they would say sort of the rest is history. In my 43 years in the practice of law, 32 years of which have been with the city, there have been many good, professional, satisfying times, and of course some very, very difficult times and challenges as well. But today, I just simply want to tell you how grateful I am to have had the opportunity to serve this city and the greater St. Louis metropolitan area during the time I was at Armstrong Teasdale. And to say thanks to Peg for her support, and to thank you again for the statements expressed in the resolution and the kind remarks we've heard today. It will make for some more good memories. Thank you very much.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolution calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. That we turn to our regular order of business. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, I'd like to have as my honored guest Gary Otten from the Painters, Al from the Firefighters, and Celeste Reeder from the Realtors.
Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. My honored guest today will be residents of the 26th Ward and former Comptroller, Vervis Jones. Thank you.
Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to recognize and welcome Joe Wilson, St. Louis University law student.
Any further introduction? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Lisa, I asked you to turn it up for me. I'd like to have as my special guest today the Ameren UE family, AT&T Group, and I have a young lady coming upstairs, the Ambassadors for Christ Homeschool, Miss Carolyn Story, but they're en route. So when you see a bunch of children walk in, that's my special guest. And my very special guest today is Sharon Tyus. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th would like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, today is September 27th. Today is National Ancestor Appreciation Day. And I am very sorry that our alderman from the 3rd is here, not here to accept our congratulations for all his ancestry work. Thank you.
Alderman from the 13th, recognized on approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to approve the minutes of the September 13th meeting.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes. I have from the Office of the President the following correspondence. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Community Jobs Board. The appointment of Mr. Brandon Flynn, who resides at 901 Montera Drive, and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2015. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Louis E. Reed, President, Board of Aldermen.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on appointment to the Community Jobs Board.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move to approve the appointment of Mr. Brandon Flynn to the Community Jobs Board from our president.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. We will dispense with items 7 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 187, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1900 through 1928 Pine and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 188, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance amending Ordinance 67840, approved December the 27th, 2007, by modifying the land use and terms of real estate tax abatement in the 2200 Locust Street redevelopment area authorized by Ordinance 67840. Board Bill 189, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a development plan for 1900 Market Street and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 190, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance amending Ordinance 68550 by modifying the terms of real estate tax abatement in the 800 Olive Street redevelopment area. That's the extent of our first readings.
Reference to the committee.
To the Housing Committee, Board Bills 187, 188, 189, and 190. That's the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
Following board bill was reported out of the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 178, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute upon receipt of and in consideration a sum of $550, a quitclaim deed to Caressa Williams, a certain city-owned property located in City Block 3736, property known as 1215 Red Fox Lane. The following board bills will report out of the Transportation and Commerce Committee. Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert Airport Space Permit AL 208 between the city and the Magic House and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 141, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the First Amendment to the operating agreement to the Lambert Airport Operating Agreement AL 472 between the city and Concourse Communications St. Louis LLC, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 142, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert Airport Vending Concession Agreement AL 245 between the city and Advenco LLC and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. The following board bills were reported out of the Neighborhood Development Committee. Board Bill 99, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5314 Wilson containing a severability clause. Board Bill 100, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4026 through 28 DeTonti redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 101, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3625 Russell redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 102, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2201 Missouri redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 103, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3915 Utah redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 128, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4155 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 129, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4045 through 47 Botanical containing a severability clause. Board Bill 130, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4031 Shenandoah containing a severability clause. Board Bill 131, sponsored by Alderman Villa, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 623 through 25 Holly Hills containing a severability clause. Board Bill 133, Committee Substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2809 McNair and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 134, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2526 California and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 135, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4903 Lansdowne containing a severability clause. Board Bill 150, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 5546 Dugan and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 151, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2107 Lilly and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 152, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2313 Edwards and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 153, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3727 McDonald containing a severability clause. Board Bill 154, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3731 McDonald containing a severability clause. Board Bill 155, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3801 McDonald containing a severability clause. Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3806 Wyoming and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 157, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4147 Wyoming and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 158, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3900 Utah and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 159, sponsored by Alderwoman Florida, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3900 Parker and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 160, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3223 Magnolia and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 161, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2927 Virginia, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 162, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3321 Shenandoah, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 163, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvy, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2144 McCausland, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 164, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4006 Shenandoah, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 165, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4920 Botanical, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 166, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4022 Castleman, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 167, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3828 Flat, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 168, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4024 Shaw, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 169, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3525 Wyoming and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 170, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a blighting study, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2232 Thurman. Board Bill 172, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3307 Missouri and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 173, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3007 Salina, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 174, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3001 through 03 McNair and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 175, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2627 South 11th Street and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 176, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 4237 Maryland and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 177, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for Hyde Park Scattered Sites 5 redevelopment area and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 180, sponsored by Alderwoman Flowers, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 1600 through 1716 and 1601 through 07 North Broadway and containing a severability clause. The following board bill was reported out of the Parks Committee. Board Bill 186, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Port Authority Commission and the Board of Public Service, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into an operations and maintenance agreement by and among the Metropolitan Park and Recreation District doing business as the Great Rivers Greenway District and the City and the Port Authority and the City Arch River 2015 Foundation and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our second reading.
We will dispense with line items 14 through 19 and 21 and 22. Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Thursday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Friday, Parks... I missed something? Thursday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Parks Committee meeting on Friday at 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Also on Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the Chambers. That's the extent of my announcements.
Alderwoman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the board. I'd like to remind everybody that Building a Bike-Friendly St. Louis has put an announcement in our box. This same announcement is available through a PDF if you are interested in putting it up on your Facebook page. They're basically asking us to join Bike St. Louis for an open house on October 3rd, 2013 from 4:30 to 7 p.m. at the Forest Park Visitor Center and share this information with our constituents. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to let people know that this Sunday is Art in the Park, which is in Francis Park. It starts at noon and goes till 6. All the money raised goes right back into the park and all that beautiful artwork that's in Francis Park that they purchased. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to invite everybody to St. James the Greater Homecoming tonight and tomorrow. And the Clifton Heights Party in the Park starts at 3 o'clock tomorrow. It's a great family event with children's games and a band, and beginning with a 3K run this year around Clifton Park. So see you tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. My guests have arrived, Ms. Carolyn Story and the Ambassadors for Christ up top. Thank you.
Welcome. Alderman from the 14th.
I would like to invite everyone to the groundbreaking for the Sebi Fountain, which is a replica of the Bosnian fountain located in Sarajevo, Bosnia, that will be built at the intersection of Marganford and Gravoy to commemorate those Bosnians that have come here and to memorialize the Bosnian community here in St. Louis in the 14th Ward. The President of Bosnia will be in attendance, and that's at noon on Sunday.
All right, thanks, Alderman. Any further? Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. First, I'd like to welcome the teams that are coming in, Tennessee State and Central Ohio State, for the Gateway Classic game tomorrow. I'd like to encourage people to buy tickets, participate, take the young people. I know there are a lot of Tennessee alumni here in St. Louis, so I know it's going to be a crowd tomorrow, 2 p.m. Also, we have coming up starting this weekend, homecoming for Harris Stowe State University and St. Louis U University. We also have a suggestion by the National Urban League that all communities support the movie coming out today called Baggage Claim. There was a premiere of it at the National Convention, and the President, Moriel, has asked our communities to support it. And for those who are interested, tonight at 7 p.m. at the AMC 16 Theater, which is the dine-in theater, Urban League Guilders will be there, and we'll be supporting the show, and we'd like for you to come out and join us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from 13, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to excuse the alderman from the 3rd ward due to necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 11th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from 13th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn the meeting until Friday, October 4th at 10 a.m.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We stand adjourned.